All right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to the Premier League predictions reactions video. This is our end of season moment that we like to do every single year. In fact, this is year number 10. 10 years of predicting and reviewing predictions of the Premier League. Let's see how we got on this year. As you know, every year we have our own unique points system, which, by the way, I think has been more or less adapted by the industry now. I may be wrong. I'm pretty sure I invented this. What we do is we rank all of our predictions. We put the league table that we predicted, and we give ourselves a point, negative or positive, on how far out we were. For example, if one team finished 10th and we predicted them to finish 20th, that's 10 points on our total. It doesn't matter if we predicted them to finish 10 points higher or 10 points lower. It's 10 points, and in this game, you don't want points. The more points, the worse, kind of like golf. So that's how we work out our score. These are the scores I've had over the last 9 years. Our best ever score was the 18-19 season, 44 points, which is quite a low total. Our worst ever year was just 2 seasons ago, 22-23 season, 84 points. So a 40-point swing between those 2 years, which is worth 2 positions per team wrong. And that's how different those 2 predictive years were. Hopefully, we're looking at a good one this year. Let's get into it. Starting off with the relegation places. Now, I'm going to sort of breeze through these. No disrespect to the relegated teams, but there's a reason that I had the 3 promoted teams that came up all to go straight back down. It often happens in football. I really felt it was going to happen this year, and it did. I didn't get them in the exact right position. In fact, I got none of them in the exact right position, but I had Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich to go down. I thought that Leicester were going to be the bottom team, and they ended up actually being the best of the 3 relegated teams. Obviously, Southampton were the worst, quite clearly there. You've got to remember, these predictions are pre-season. There's managerial changes happened at 2 of these 3 clubs. There's managerial changes that have happened all throughout the Premier League. You're looking at a very different version of a club at the start of the season to how it ends. But yeah, not too bad here in terms of those teams. It's just such a big ask for a team, no matter who they are, coming up from the Championship to adapt in time. And people like, you know, your Brightons, your Brentfords, Forest this year, in the last few years, people that have come up and actually made themselves a proper Premier League team, it doesn't get the plaudits it deserves. It's so hard to do. And obviously all 3 of these teams have struggled. Ipswich, you know, at one point they looked like they might have a go. They had the biggest challenge. That not only have they just come up to the Prem, they've only been in Championship for 5 minutes. They've had a real big kind of change as a club over the last 3 or 4 years. Teams like Leicester and Southampton have been in the Premier League more recently. They've still got some of that parachute money. So maybe they could have staked a claim to stay, but none of them achieved it. And in terms of me picking up points, not too bad here. However, when we get into the 17th position, this is one of there was 3 teams that got me the most stick in the comments, going back to the predictions video. And this was one of them. When I said Fulham, we're going to finish 17th, people said, Spencer, you don't know ball. You've got the opposite of elite ball knowledge. Because obviously they finished 11th. So I was 6 places out here. Now, one of my worst predictions, I will admit, I've been pleasantly surprised by Fulham and the job that's been done there. And yeah, I should have taken it a little bit more seriously. I'm happy to wear that. I have got a little bit of a stat for you, though. I don't want to read too much into this. But generally, when I'm looking for outliers, when I'm looking at league tables, I'm looking at end-of-season performance, one of the things I do look at is goal difference. Now, it doesn't tell you everything. Because, for example, if a team was to win lots of games 1-0, which is actually impressive, clean sheets, but then when they lost 2-3, 4-0, but the results were the same in terms of wins and losses, you would not have a great goal difference, but you'd still be, you know, a team that was picking up wins. But I use it as a comparison exercise. And what's interesting is we'll get in to talk about Spurs when we come into where I predicted them later. But obviously Spurs were the team that finished in 17th. Now, and you look at Fulham's goal difference and you look at Spurs' goal difference, there's only 1 goal between them. There's only 1 goal between them, but there's 16 points between them. And that tells you a lot more about Spurs than it does about Fulham for me. I still think this is a poor prediction from me. But the fact that Fulham only had a 0 goal difference, I think is interesting here. So I'm taking the L, but it's only a little L. It's not a capital L. Everton, I had them finishing 16th. They finished in 13th. But again, context must be applied. They had a managerial change. They brought in the Moisaya. We know about him. We know about what he's done for West Ham. He is Mr. Everton in many ways. He's come back. You can't say anything other than he's done a fantastic job. And he has really elevated them up that table. Before Moyes came back, this prediction was looking close to bang on, to be honest. So I'm very happy with this. Yes, I've picked up 3 points in the total, but some of these positions, especially this year, very interchangeable. You know, I had the three basically relegated teams that were quite clear they were going to get relegated fairly early on in the season. Everything like with the next probably 7 or 8 spots above that was quite interchangeable. So if I'm in the right ballpark, I'm happy. Everton obviously going towards their new stadium next season. For them and their fans, I know it's a big club. Hopefully this is the start of something special. Brentford, I had in 15th. They finished 10th. So 5 places better than I predicted. And I keep being pleasantly surprised by Brentford. What a job, not just Thomas Frank, but the whole club are doing. I mean, they are, in my opinion, they're leading the way, along with the likes of Brighton. Just the way they go about their business, under the radar, not being worried about what everyone else is doing, just doing their own thing. I can't say enough good things. I never put them in the relegation battle. I believe that they've got everything they need to be a proper Premier League team now, which is a massive statement in itself when you consider the sort of longer term history of Brentford. But they surprised me again. I think they surprised a lot of people this year, especially at home. Will they keep Mbeumo next season? He's a huge player for them. They've got a couple of key players, but I know that if he does go, they've got another one lined up. It's just the Brentford way. In 14th, I had Wolves to finish 14th. They ended up finishing 16th. And what an interesting season this was for Wolves, because at one point, they looked relegation threatened. And in fact, in another year, they very much could have been. They also made a managerial change. That made a huge difference. They went on a ridiculous run of wins just before the end of the season, which then dropped off again once they'd secured Premier League safety. But it was that run of wins, I think it might have been 6 wins in a row they got, that just propelled them into the safe zones. And at that point, 14th looked bang on. They then dropped off again a little bit. Look, I thought Wolves were going to be in and amongst it this year. They sold Kilman, albeit for a lot of money, to West Ham. There was talk about the financial sustainability and the FFP and stuff. And look, the fact they're still in the Prem is something they should be very happy about. And I was only 2 places out here. I don't think that's too bad. Bournemouth. I had Bournemouth to finish 13th. They finished 9th. Again, 4 places better than I thought they would be. There's a lot of teams this year that are in that sort of 4 to 5 places off mark, which I'm not buzzing about. But again, Bournemouth, what a job this football club is doing. You cannot get away from it. I know they've had new owners recently, but generally, even the decision to get rid of O'Neill when they got rid of him, which at the time looked controversial, in hindsight has been unbelievable. Their recruitment as well. People like Justin Kluivert, who, I'll be honest, I wasn't convinced by based on his sort of success rate at other clubs. He's had a really good season. Obviously, Semenyo. They've just sold the centre-back to Real Madrid. If that doesn't reinforce their recruitment policy, I don't know what does. They got Kirkes at left-back, who's destined for big things. I'm a big fan of the business that Bournemouth are doing. We're going to see them very soon, by the way. They're playing in TST in basically a week's time. We're going to see them in America. Hashtag playing at TST as well. Maybe we'll play against them. Whilst we're on the subject of hashtag, we are in the middle of an investment raise that, as you're watching this, will be going live in a matter of days. We've been doing our pre-registration phase. Lots of people have pledged to invest in hashtag in what is going to be an exciting new chapter in our history. I'll leave a link in the description. It's not too late to get involved, but I do think we're going to be oversubscribed in this raise. So if you do want to buy shares, you better act fast. Check out the link in the description. So yeah, kudos to Bournemouth. The next one is massive, okay? Very, very important. In 12th, I predicted Nottingham Forest. Now, along with Fulham and one other team that we're going to get to in a minute, these were the 3 most mentioned teams in terms of people criticising my predictions. With Fulham, they said I was smoking crack. They were going to do way better than 17th. I have to say the comments were right about that one because they got 11th. With Forest, I had a lot of people saying, Spencer, you're smoking crack again. Forest are going to be way worse than 12th. Why have you put them so high up? Well, listen, I was 5 places out of my Forest prediction, but they weren't 5 places worse. They were 5 places better. So it's a weird one that I actually want to give myself some credit for being 5 places out, but I don't think many people had Forest that high. In fact, I looked at a lot of the other predictions. There's only maybe 1 or 2 other people that fancied Forest this year. A lot of the comments were saying I should swap Forest and Fulham and that Forest were going to struggle. And I even said, if you go back and watch it, that I wasn't convinced by the manager, Nuno Espirito Santo, but I liked the squad. Well, the squad has done a fantastic job. And the manager as well, got to give him credit, but Gibbs White, Elanga, Chris Wood, not even, look at the defence, Milenkovic, Murillo, Aina, like, to a man, they've been fantastic. Sells in goal, like, obviously they dropped off a little bit, didn't they? Dropped off a little bit. They secured some European football, but there would have been a point in the season where they very much were targeting Champions League, especially with the 5 places available. I think that was a big ask. It was always going to be hard for them to keep it up. But really, really strong season. It could have been more than 5 places out for me if they had, say, got 3rd or 4th or 5th. In the end, they got 7th, so I was 5 places out. But I'm actually really happy with that prediction because it was a bit of a... I actually said in the video, this is my sort of wildcard prediction, to have Forest that high. They should have been higher. Mad. And then to complete the bottom half, in 11th position, I had Crystal Palace. And I was only 1 place out here. I was 1 place out because they finished 12th. I'm really happy with this prediction because they are a difficult team to predict, Palace. And obviously, they lost Michael Olise in the summer, which was a huge loss. And it took them a little while to get going. Obviously, they won the FA Cup this year as well, which is massive. Their first proper trophy in their history, which is crazy. This has been the year of the trophy droughts coming to an end, hasn't it? But I'm quite happy with getting a team like Palace so close. I'll take that. Moving into the top half of the table, I had Brighton to finish 10th. They finished 8th. You've got to give Hertzler some credit here. Youngest manager in the Prem. He has he hit the ground running, didn't he? Fantastic form at the start of the season. They did have quite a big blip in the middle of it, and they sort of pulled it back round. I mean, I actually said, I remember looking through the comments that I said I thought Brighton would be happy with 10th. As fans, they'd be happy if they're around that position. And the comments kind of agreed with me on that. Brighton fans have given me some stick over the years. But on that one, they sort of said, yeah, we'd be happy there. I think you guys might be better than 10th. I think like long term, the way you run your business, similar to all the nice things I said about Brentford, I think Brighton can start to actually get slightly bigger ambitions now. I'm not saying you'll be a perennial European qualifier, but I do think because most people aren't playing the same game as Brighton and Brentford, they aren't taking on that same approach. They should be, in my opinion. Certainly the huge teams should be following their suit and at least trying to. And even if they do try to, can they do it as well? Do they have the expertise? I'm not sure they do. So I think because of my belief in Brighton's model now, I think as Brighton fans, you shouldn't be happy with anything less than 10th. You've got to remember where you came from. That's really important. But you're really good at your job. You're really good at the job of running a football club, which I think actually gets forgotten about. We talk about how big teams are. We talk about how big Man United are. But what does it mean? If you can't run the club, if you're not doing a good job with the assets that you have at your disposal, it's pretty irrelevant, I think. So fair play to Brighton. Interesting to see where I predict them next season. My team next, West Ham. Now, I never bloody know what to do with my club. I had us in 9th position. We finished 14th, which actually, thanks to the last day, we beat Ipswich on the last day and we climbed a few places. It could have been much worse this. I'm 5 places out in the end. I said we had one of the best transfer windows last summer, and I stand by that in terms of players we got and the money we spent on them. People like Fulkrug, the big concern with him was his injury record, and it ended up being true. He didn't play enough. He was injured too much. But he's a goal scorer. He's definitely a goal scorer. Is he going to work out as a transfer for us? I don't know. If he doesn't play, then he can't, can he? But there's something there. Obviously, we've had a managerial change as well. And it was a necessary one, I think. That was my big concern in the predictions video. Lopetegui. Never fancied him. Never thought that was a good appointment. Didn't think it was enough of a departure from Moyes. I do like Potter. I'm quite happy with Potter. He needs to be backed now and bring in players that fit his system because he is trying to do something different. But I'm hopeful if that happens, then we'll be in a good place. The league's more competitive than ever at this point. I don't know if we're going to get back to the European competition anytime soon, but hopefully we can be top halfers for the foreseeable future. My next prediction was the other most talked about one, probably the most talked about one, actually, in the comments. Again, I got some criticism, but it was for the wrong reasons, guys. Because I had Man United finishing in 8th, and people said I was mental. There was no way, according to you lot, that Man United were going to finish as low as 8th. They finished 15th, guys. What's going on? I mean, I'm getting stick for saying Man United were going to finish 8th, and they were 7 places worse than that. So I'm not going to sit here and give myself loads of credit for this one. You can't when you're 7 places out, ultimately. However, how many other people predicted them lower than 8th? I don't think you'll find many, guys. Such a bad season from them. No excuse. I know they've got a new manager, but so do lots of teams. The assets they've got, the money they've spent, there is no excuse. Really not convinced with the Amorim situation. He needs a window, a summer transfer window, of course. And I'm always one that calls for the backing of managers. So I'm more than happy, in the idea of giving him a full season at the wheel. But he needs to show what he's all about at this level because I haven't really seen it yet. I know he got him to European final. But as a West Ham fan, the fact that he allowed Spurs to win that trophy, I'm not happy with him at all. But yeah, I think Man United is a terrible season. And it's weird, but it's not a terrible prediction, is it? It's not, because most people had them higher than this. Points-wise, it's cost me 7 points, but it could have been easily a 10-pointer, that. So I've actually done a little bit of damage limitation there. But I mean, some of the comments last year, Man United 8th is mental. Spencer is losing his mind. I didn't lose my mind enough. In 7th, I had Chelsea, right? Now, this top 6 or top 7, I guess, this year was mad. Obviously, Champions League spots for 5th and up, like, so competitive. Chelsea ended up getting 4th, and they're back in the Champions League, of course. They finished 3 places better than I thought they would. I'm not going to do... There's one prediction left that is terrible, which you could probably work out what it is. The rest are actually pretty decent, and I'm not too angry with this Chelsea prediction. Like, it's a strange club at the moment. They're going through a transition. I think they have steadied the ship somewhat this year. Cole Palmer's performances lifted them in the first half of the season, dropped off massively, but then they've had other players come through since then. You know, Caicedo is obviously starting to live up to his price tag. They've got such a young squad that they have got massive room for improvement, and they could be a force to be reckoned with next year, to be honest. Particularly interested to see what they do in the window. But as for this prediction, don't mind it. And the next two, I really don't mind. We can put them up together because they're both bang on. The only two that I got bang on, 5th and 6th, locked in. Spen Doggy Dog knows 5th and 6th positions very well. Villa and Newcastle finished exactly where I thought they would. Obviously with the same managers they started the season with, which is important. You've got a lot of different factors here. You've got to build in the fact that Aston Villa were playing European football this year. You've got to build in the fact that Newcastle have had a cup run and ended up winning a cup this year. These things do have effects on their season. I think Villa, all things considered, should be fairly happy with that. You know, it's a big distraction playing Champions League football, and they did really well in it. But they've been able to continue to be a European qualifier, and they're really kind of under Emery sort of staking a claim as a perennial sort of big six team. I don't even know what we can call it. I don't even know if there is anything anymore. I think there's maybe like a big three at the moment in the league who are like City, Arsenal, Liverpool. And everything else outside of that is probably fair game. You obviously can't put United and Spurs in that convo anymore. Not at the moment. Newcastle and Villa are arguably, and Chelsea ahead of them. So I don't know. I think we've just got a big three at the minute, guys. So Villa and Newcastle very much keeping themselves in that chasing pack. Excited to see Newcastle back in the Champions League this year. What a job Eddie Howe is doing. Again, interested to see who they bring in this summer. Can they hold on to Isak? Because that is key. One of the best players in the league this year. Unbelievable. So I'm very happy with this one. No points picked up for either team that they're keeping the score down. However, the next one, my 4th place prediction, is the one that has hurt me this year. It's a 13-pointer, lads. I had Spurs finishing 4th and they finished 17th. And this could have gone either way. On the last day, they could have climbed quite a few spots. But ultimately, they have finished one spot above the relegation zone. This is crazy because they've done it in the same year they've qualified for the Champions League by winning the Europa League. That is a mad sort of stat. I think it is evidence of how competitive the Premier League is now, that a team that is just staying in the Prem is winning the Europa League. It shows you how much money there is in the English game. It shows you that how lucky some of these teams were that those other 3 relegated teams were so bad this year. Because Spurs are one of the few perennial Premier League teams that have never been relegated from it. And this is the closest they've come pretty much, isn't it? There is some interesting stats here. Now, I am not someone calling for Ange to go. I know it's easy to say they just won the European trophy, obviously. But I actually like Ange. I truly believed, actually, when he said, I always win a trophy in my second season, mate. I truly believed he was going to win a trophy when he said that. And they did. I will look at the goal difference stat again here. I know I mentioned it with the Fulham comparison, but I think it's really poignant and important for Spurs. So they've finished 17th, which is terrible. They've had less than 40 points, which is relegation usually fodder. However, they did only have a -1 goal difference. Compare that to United, for example, who finished in 15th, 2 places above Spurs. They had a -10 goal difference, right? The reason I think that stat is interesting is, so first of all, everyone knows Spurs are big scorers. They're scoring a lot of goals, attacking football they play. If you look at their injuries this year, I know a lot of teams had injuries, but they had a serious amount of the season without the likes of Van de Ven and Romero. And they don't have the depth and quality at centre-back. Outside of that, they really drop off. When you play the style of play that Spurs play, I think your centre-backs are arguably your most important position, and they just don't have the quality when they're out. Maybe that's where Postecoglou messed up. He was so strict with his commitment to attacking football that he didn't see the woods for the trees, and he didn't go, I've got to mix it up. You look at the European final against United, that is what he did. He mixed it up, actually, and he said, no, we're not going to go the Spurs way. We're going to play the way that wins us this game of football and wins us a trophy, which absolutely worked. I think if he applied that logic a bit more this season, they would be a lot higher up. Like I say, just 1 goal between them and Fulham and goal difference, but 16 points between them. 6 places in the league between them as well. If Spurs didn't have Van de Ven and Romero out for so much, I genuinely think they'd be a lot higher. I think this season, I'm not going to say a fair world, because I don't think Spurs have been unfairly treated. Everyone deals with injuries. But I think in a sort of like equal world, I think maybe a better way of saying it, with their squad managed a little bit differently, I think Spurs would have been around 10th or 11th, to be honest. I think it's a bit of an outlier, the fact they finished 17th. But I'm not sitting here trying to heap praise on Spurs. I'm not a Spurs fan at all. But I don't see this as a consistent threat for Spurs. I think they'll sort themselves out. I think they'll buy in the right places. Van de Ven, look at that clearance he did in the final. Like, that's the sort of thing they were missing. He's got power, he's got pace, he's a Premier League centre-back through and through. Just needs to keep him fit, and they'll be in a really good spot. I really like Spurs' squad. A lot of young talent. You look at the likes of Dogi, Bergvall, I really like. You know, young lads coming through as well, particularly in the attacking positions. They have got exciting talent. So whether it's with Postecoglou or someone else, Spurs will definitely be better than 17th next season. They'll be top half. But it has picked me up 13 points. The next three predictions are not too bad. I had Liverpool to finish third. They obviously won the league. I don't hate this prediction. I don't think many people saw slotting in so comfortably and winning the league in his first season and making everything Klopp did look nowhere near as impressive, quite frankly. Fair play. Obviously, Trent leaving now, but the fact they've kept Salah, I think, is really important. There could be some more movement, but what a season. You've got to just clap it and say well done to Arne Slot. I had Man City to finish second. They finished third. When you consider how bad City were by their standards, by Pep's standards for this season, the fact they've actually ended up finishing third is pretty good because they looked poor at times. They obviously had a few things to contend with. Like I said in the predictions video, I wasn't sure about De Bruyne this year. I think that was right. I don't think he was bad, but he didn't play enough. He missed a lot of football for injury. I mentioned the Alvarez departure being keen. I think it was. You know, they went big in January. Marmoush looks like a good addition. They brought in a lot of younger players, but a lot of them haven't played many minutes. And I'm starting to see murmurs of discontent from Pep. I do wonder if there's trouble in paradise and what the future could hold for Man City. But as for this prediction, it's only one place out ultimately. You can't be too mad at that. Same for Arsenal. I thought this was the year they were going to win the league. If you take out the Liverpool kind of exceptionalness and how well Arne Slot has done, then Arsenal and Man City are in the right spots, aren't they? It's just without Liverpool above them. I'm not mad at it. This is not where I've damaged my predictions this year. They were solid. It's the Spurs one that's killed me the most. It's weirdly Man United and Forest have actually given me a lot of points, but I'm not mad at them at all because I was on the right lines. I thought United would be bad, and they were bad. I thought Forest would be good, and they'd be good. Really, it's Spurs and Fulham because Fulham I should have done better. Spurs is bad. You could throw Brentford and West Ham in there as 5-pointers as well. Ultimately, this season, I've picked up 64 points, which is just below average. In a year when Spurs and United have surprised so many people, in a year where Forest have surprised so many people, this points total could have been a lot worse. My worst ever is 84 points. This is 20 points better than that, but interestingly, it's 20 points worse than my best one. So it's absolutely bang in the middle in terms of my best and worst prediction. In terms of the 10 years we've been doing it, it's joint 6th. I actually had 64 points in the 16-17 season as well. I've been doing this a while, guys. 15-16 season was the first time. Last year, 23-24 season was my second best. I wanted to follow that up with a record breaker. It hasn't happened, but I think we know there was some very strange performances this year. But it does set the stall out for a very difficult year to predict next season as well. Let me know, as ever, what you thought of my predictions in the comments below. We'll see you on another video soon. Until next time, don't go changing.